All right, so today we're going over the answers on the Chapter 8 practice test. So for the first 6 questions, the directions say, find the missing length indicated, leave your answer in simplest radical form. And so the first thing you need to do is you need to have a note card, and you should have a right triangle with an altitude drawn in, and there are 3 equations that are going to work. The first one has to do with the altitude, and that altitude squared is going to be equal to the x times the y. So the 2 smaller pieces of the hypotenuse. And then the other equation is going to be the leg squared equals the piece closest to it times the length of the whole thing. The third equation just uses the other leg. All right, so problem number 1 uses the altitude. So we're going to use that first equation, which says that you should take whatever's on the altitude and square it, set it equal to the 2 pieces of the hypotenuse multiplied together. So 64 times 36. Then you simply take your calculator and you're going to multiply 64 times 36. And then when you want to take the square root of that number, you're going to hit the second button, the square root button, and then if you hit second answer, it's going to take the answer that was previously in there, so you don't need to retype it, hit the equal sign, and x is going to be equal to 48. All right, let's jump down to number 3. So for number 3, now instead of using the altitude, we're going to use one of the legs of the right triangle. So when you have a leg, you're going to square it and set it equal to the piece closest, which in this case is 9, times the length of the whole thing, which is x. Then you're going to square 15 on your calculator. You can just hit the square button. You get 225. Then you're going to divide both sides by 9. And you should get x equals, so 225 divided by 9, 25. Number 3 is almost exactly like number 1, except for the x is moved to a different spot. So whatever's on the altitude, you're going to square it. Set that equal to the 2 pieces of the hypotenuse multiplied together, so x times 36. Then you're going to square 48, which gets you 2,304, equal to 36x. Divide both sides by 36. So in this case, x should be equal to 64. All right? Check your answers for numbers 2, 4, and 6, and then make sure you got the same answers I got. Jumping down to number 7, you're going to find the geometric mean of 12 and 32. So to find the geometric mean, you're going to multiply the 2 numbers and then take the square root. So on your calculator, you're going to multiply 12 times 32. You're going to get 384. Now, if you try to take the square root on your calculator, you're going to realize that that number is not a perfect square, and so it spits out this decimal at you. So if you're being asked for a decimal, that's fine, but if you're being asked for your answer in simplest radical form, you actually have to take 384 and get the prime factorization. So 384 is 2 times 192, which is 2 times 91, and that is not 91, sorry, 96. So that's 2 and 48. Hi. And then 48 is 2 times 24, 24 is 2 times 12, 12 is 2 times 6, 2 times 6 is 2 times 3, so that's a lot of 2s. So we've got 1 pair of 2s, a second pair of 2s, a third pair of 2s. So we've got 2 times 2 times 2, and then we've got a 2 and a 3 that don't have pairs, so 6 inside the radical, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, so it should be 8 rad 6. And then all you need to do for numbers 9 through 11 is type them in your calculator. So you want to make sure your calculator is in what we call degree mode. It should say DEG there. Then you're just going to hit the tangent of 37, the equal sign, and then it just wants you to round to 3 decimal places. So you have 0.753, but there's a 5 next to it, so you got to round up to 4, so it's 0.754. Tangent of 36 rounds to 0.727, and the sine of 81 rounds to 0.988. All right, let's move on to page 2. So at the top of page 2, the directions say, find the value of each trigonometric ratio, should say ratio, not ration, as a fraction. So you want to leave it as a fraction. So if you're finding the sine of angle x, circle angle x, the opposite is over here, the hypotenuse is over here. So you're going to say 18 over 30, and then just reduce it. These are both divisible by 6, so 18 divided by 6 is 3, and 30 divided by 6 is 5. The sine of angle C for 17, circle angle C. Here's the opposite. Here's the hypotenuse. So you've got 24 over 30. These are also both divisible by 6. So 24 divided by 6 is 4. 30 divided by 6 is 5. And number 19, we have the cosine of angle Z, so circle angle Z. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So the ratio is 40 to 41, which is not reducible. And then 21 says find the missing side, round to the nearest tenth. So here's the angle measure given to you. From there, you need to figure out whether you need to use sine, cosine, or tangent. So the x side is the opposite, and the 13 is the hypotenuse. So you should use sine of the opposite, sine of 48 is equal to the opposite, which is x, over the hypotenuse, which is 13. And then in order to solve for x, you multiply both sides by 13. Here they cancel, and you have x is equal to 13 times the sine of 48. So make sure your calculator is in degree mode, and multiply 13 times the sine of 48, hit the equal sign, and round to the nearest tenth. That's one number after the decimal, which is a 6, but there's a 6 next to it, so it rounds up to 9.7. Number 23, circle the angle, and then figure out what the sides. This time you've got the adjacent and the hypotenuse. So this time you want to use cosine of 39 degrees, set it equal to the adjacent, which is x, over the hypotenuse, which is 13. Multiply both sides by the 13. These cancel. You have x equals 13 times the cosine of 39. And type it into the calculator. So 13 times the cosine of 39. I got 10.1. There's a 0 next to it, so it stays. So it's 10.1. Check your answers for the rest of the page, and then let me know if you have any questions. All right, thanks for watching.